Welcome back to Fran's Talks Books. This is a place for nerds who like words. As a certified bookworm, I always find pleasure in talking about books I like and believe it's my duty to talk about books that I don't like. I mean, if I don't tell people what not to read, how will they know? Come, join me in my journey through the wonderful world of fantasy and fiction. I talk about books every week here. If you like what you hear, please share the good word with all your friends and family. And for some reason you don't like what you hear, feel free to discontinue. Let's get reading. None of This Is True by Jewell. In recent past, I've taken to crime thrillers. And for a brief period of time, that was the only thing I was consuming. OTT, news, Audible, anywhere and everywhere. So much so that I started to see hidden agendas and devious plots in everyday life. One side effect of keeping reading the same thing is that you start seeing patterns, and that somehow makes the whole experience boring. Because once you start seeing patterns, you start anticipating how a story is going to unfold. And that kind of takes the thrill out from the thrillers you were planning to read. I was on that precipice, that place where I could predict how a story is likely to develop. About 10% into the story, whether it will be a book or a screen, doesn't matter. So when I picked up None of This Is True by Jewell, I was about 110% sure that I knew what I was signing for. Damn, was I wrong. So I picked this on Audible, and let me get this thing out of the way first. The narration of this book is brilliant. As you know, an Audible is only as effective as the narrator that you have, irrespective of the story that it portrays. I mean, the story does make part of it, but it also matters who's narrating it, because I've seen some really good stories, gone really unbearable because the narrator was really bad, and vice versa. A solo story can actually be a perfect audiobook if you have a good narrator for it. So None of This Is True has a brilliant narrator duo. Nicola Walker and Louise Brealey both do fantastic justice to both main characters, Alex Summer and Josie Fair. So as you might have guessed, this is a story that revolves around two females. Alex Summers, who is a successful podcaster. She is a woman of the world. She has a great career that brings her in contact with powerful and self-made women all the time. She has a picture-perfect life, a great career, a good-looking husband, lovely children, and a gang of friends with whom she is at a trendy upscale pub celebrating her 45th birthday. And that's when she runs into Josie Fair. Now Josie is on the other end of the spectrum. She's demure and unassuming, kind of plain Jane looking woman who is also out there to celebrate her 45th birthday. They're birthday twins. That's when we meet both of them first. A few days later, both these women bump into each other again. This time they bump into each other outside the school where Alex's children are attending. Now Josie confesses to Alex saying that she's been listening to her podcast, and she says that she has a good story for her podcast. Josie claims that she is on the cusp of a great change in her life. Now, reluctantly, Alex decides to record Josie's story. And we get to know Josie's life a little bit. And her life is strange and complicated. The more we learn about her, the more uncomfortable that story goes, and the more unsettled we become. As the story progresses, we start to realize that Josie has some really dark and unsettling secrets. Before we adjust to that feeling, you actually see her inviting herself into Alex's home. Now that feeling of unease keeps increasing and increasing. And just as she has come, Josie suddenly leaves. But even when she leaves behind a really scary legacy, a real life crime scenario for Alex to face. Now, we are left with a very unsettling reveal. When you're in the middle of it, for the part of the story, you are completely sure as to what you are expecting. And on some levels, you even get it. The twist you expect actually happens. And just when you are congratulating yourself, the story takes a really unexpected turn. And all the things you thought you knew or expected, they turn on their head. And they leave you reeling under an abrupt change of pace. The book has a very twisty end. Things you expect to happen, but then they are followed by things that you didn't even consider. The climax of the novel is really true to the title. By the time you reach the end, you seriously are left with a feeling like none of this is true. Now, my original review, this is where I stopped. But then yesterday, I got around to talking to my best friend. He just had finished reading the novel and he didn't like the ending. And that led us into a conversation about how a novel should end. Now, in his opinion, he likes them to end with a neat, tidy, bow on the box type ending, where all the open plot points are closed. Whereas for me, I like having an open-ended novel. For me, the idea of not having a complete closure actually makes the experience of reading it more interesting. Because then I get to decide what the ending should be. And the ending could be as twisted or sinister or crooked as the reader personally is. So I guess in conclusion what you can say is that if you're one of those people who like their ends to be neat and tidy, you might be left feeling a little unsettled with this one. But even if that's the case, it still makes a very good read. And I really hope that you give it a try. Oh my, we are already at the end of this episode? I'm glad you stuck around. Don't forget to spread the good word. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk in your ears today. Catch you next week. Till then, stay happy, stay nerdy, and keep reading.